It started with a voicemail that shouldn't have existed. 3 weeks after her brother Daniel's accidental death, Claire Evans sat alone in her kitchen, scrolling through his old contacts, hoping to hear his voice one last time. Then, suddenly, a new notification appeared. Greater than. One new voicemail received from Daniel Evans. Her heart froze. The timestamp read 3 days after his death. She pressed play. Static hissed, then his trembling voice. Claire, if you're hearing this, it means they've found me. The file, it's not gone. Look in. A crash, muffled shouting. Then silence. The message ended mid-sentence. For a long moment, Claire couldn't move. Her brother had been a senior data analyst at the Ledger, a financial newspaper known for its aggressive investigations. The police said he'd fallen asleep at the wheel on his way home from work. But Daniel never drove tired. He was meticulous, obsessive even. Now the voicemail shattered the illusion of an accident. She opened her laptop and began digging. The coroner's report had no talk screen, no photo of the scene. No mention of the encrypted flash drive Daniel always wore on a chain. The drive that was missing when she identified his body. Claire called his editor Howard Blake, an old man with a smoker's cough and eyes that never stayed still. Greater than. Howard, did Daniel mention anything before he? Claire, stop, Blake interrupted. You don't want to follow this. The story died with him. Then he hung up. The tone of his voice chilled her more than the voicemail itself. That night, she poured a glass of wine and replayed the message again and again, writing down every background sound, footsteps, a distant horn, maybe the hum of an elevator. But one noise stood out, a faint beeping, rhythmic and electronic. She'd heard it before. At Daniel's apartment, the next morning, she found the same sound coming from a motion sensor above his desk. Hidden behind it, wrapped in black tape, was a tiny voice recorder. Inside, 2 audio files, one named Tess, the other MF_001. She hit play. Daniel's voice again, calm this time. If you're listening, I've failed to get the story out. The missing file isn't gone. It's hidden where no one would ever think to look. They're laundering money through the health grants, Claire. Start with the hospital contracts. But be careful, they watch everything. A click. Silence. Claire stared at the recorder, the pulse in her neck pounding. Daniel wasn't just killed. He'd left her the trail. And she'd just taken her first step into the same trap that ended his life. Claire couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. Since finding the recorder, every step felt monitored. The flicker of a car headlight behind her. The same black sedan parked near her building 2 nights in a row. Still, she pressed forward. The next morning, she went to St. Helena Medical, the first hospital listed in Daniel's notes. It looked ordinary from the outside, beige walls, mirrored glass, a fountain that hadn't worked in months. But the deeper she walked inside, the stranger it felt. Too many security cameras, too few patients. At the records office, Claire flashed her old journalist badge from her university days. Greater than. I'm doing research on hospital infrastructure grants, she said, forcing a smile. The clerk, a thin man with tired eyes, hesitated before handing over a folder. You didn't get this from me. Inside were invoices for new surgical robots, millions in. Payments, all authorized by the same name, Dr. David Harland, the hospital's procurement chief. The problem? Harland had been dead for over a year. Claire stepped outside, stunned, clutching the folder. The beeping from Daniel's recording echoed in her memory. She pulled out her phone and typed, Harland Hospital Transfer. Records. The search showed a list of accounts connected to a single offshore shell. Lunaris Holdings. The same name appeared in Daniel's last email draft. Never sent. Greater than. Claire, if you ever find Lunaris, it means they've already cleaned it. Be careful who you trust. As she read, a shadow fell over her screen. Greater than. Miss Evans? A man in a gray coat stood before her. His smile was polite, but his eyes cold. Greater than. I'm sorry to bother you. You dropped this. He held out her car keys, but she hadn't dropped anything. Thanks, she said cautiously, taking them. When she looked up again, he was gone. Her pulse quickened. She rushed to her car, started the engine, and checked the mirrors. The black sedan was parked across the street. She drove off, weaving through traffic until she reached a quiet rest stop on the outskirts of town. There she opened the glove box and froze. Inside was a small sealed envelope. No postage, no name. She tore it open. Inside, a photo of Daniel, taken the night before he died. He was standing beside his car, talking to someone, the same man in the gray coat. On the back of the photo, in Daniel's handwriting, "If you see him, run." Claire didn't sleep that night. The photo haunted her. Daniel's terrified face. The man in the gray coat blurred behind him like a ghost. She sat at her kitchen table, the recorder in front of her, replaying Daniel's final message again and again. Each time, she noticed something new. A faint clicking sound under his voice. Rhythmic, mechanical, not random. She opened an old audio editor on her laptop and isolated the pattern. The clicks formed a Morse sequence. She translated it slowly, her hands trembling. Room 319. Not safe. Hide truth in sound. Room 319. That was the surgical wing at St. Helena. The same hospital. The next morning, she returned, wearing a visitor badge she had borrowed from a friend. The hall smelled like disinfectant and fear. A nurse passed by, glancing at her just a little too long. Claire smiled and kept walking until she found the numbered door. Room 319. Empty. Dark. But on the wall, a faint square outline where a plaque had been removed. She pulled out her phone flashlight and saw scratched initials beneath the paint. DC. Daniel Carter. Something had been hidden here. She pushed against the wall panel, and a small compartment gave way. Inside lay a USB drive sealed in plastic, and a folded note written in Daniel's precise handwriting. "If they find me first, this is my insurance. Do not connect it online. They monitor everything." Claire's breath hitched. She slipped the drive into her pocket, stepped out into the corridor, and froze. The nurse who'd looked at her earlier was standing at the far end, talking into a radio. Claire turned and walked briskly, her heels echoing. The nurse's voice rose behind her. "She's here. East Wing." The elevator doors closed just as two security guards appeared. Claire punched the ground floor button and exhaled shakily. When she reached the parking lot, the black sedan was back. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove straight to her late brother's old workshop on the edge of the city, a dusty space filled with outdated servers, radio parts, and one functioning offline computer. It took an hour to power it all up. Finally, she inserted the USB. A folder popped up, labeled Lunaris_report. Inside were hundreds of scans, financial ledgers, equipment certifications, even surgical death reports, all forged. But at the bottom was a single audio file. She pressed play. Daniel's voice came through, weary but determined. "If you're hearing this, Claire, it means I failed to stop them. Lunaris isn't a company. It's a system. They build hospitals by influence, falsify research, and they've been doing it for decades. The equipment failures, not accidents, controlled experiments. Someone has to show the world." Then silence, and finally a whisper, a second voice, almost inaudible. "Greater than." "They're already inside." The computer screen flickered and went black. Claire's hands trembled as the computer shut down. She yanked out the USB and backed away from the desk, heart pounding. The power failure couldn't be random, not after that whisper. Outside, the wind howled through the metal shutters. She waited, holding her breath, until the workshop lights flickered back on. The system rebooted itself. A new window appeared on the screen. "Do not run." But before she could react, a faint static noise filled the speakers. A voice emerged, distorted, male, calm, "Greater than, Miss Carter." "You shouldn't have come this far." Claire froze. She whispered, "Who are you?" "A friend of your brother once, before he forgot his place." The sound faded, replaced by a soft hum, and then a face appeared briefly on the glitching monitor. A man in a gray coat. The same blurred figure from the photograph. Claire stumbled back, pulling the power cord from the wall. The screen went dark, but outside a car engine started. She looked through the dusty window, the black sedan again, headlights slicing through the fog. Her mind raced. Daniel's files mentioned Lunaris Systems, a tech conglomerate that handled medical data for half the country. If they were experimenting on patients, no one could stop them. She grabbed the USB, wrapped it in a cloth, and hid it inside her coat pocket. Then she dialed the only person she trusted, Detective Harris, her brother's former colleague. Claire? Jesus, it's been years, he said. I found something, she whispered. About Daniel. About Lunaris. There was silence, then a slow, heavy sigh. Meet me at the old observatory. Midnight. Don't bring your phone. The call ended. Claire left through the back door, sticking to side streets. The sky hung low, drizzling faintly, the city lights bleeding in the puddles. Every few blocks she glanced behind and saw the same gray car a few turns back. By the time she reached the observatory, the rain had stopped. The massive dome loomed over the hill, its metal doors chained and rusted. Harris stood near the entrance, collar up, cigarette glowing faintly. He looked older, wearier. You shouldn't have opened that file, he muttered as she approached. I had to, Claire said. He died for this. Harris looked away. Then give me the drive. She hesitated. Why? So I can make sure it's safe. His tone was calm, too calm. Claire took a small step back. How did you know about the file? The detective exhaled, smoke curling in the cold air. Because they called me, Claire. They said you come looking. Her stomach dropped. Before she could move, another figure stepped from the shadows behind Harris. Tall, expressionless, gray coat glinting under the faint moonlight. The same man from the tape, greater than. Miss Carter, he said quietly. Your brother was brilliant, but he didn't understand the price of truth. For a moment, Claire couldn't breathe. The man in the gray coat stood perfectly still, calm, professional, terrifyingly polite. Detective Harris didn't move either. His cigarette burned down to the filter, smoke twisting between them like a question mark greater than. What do you want from me? Claire asked, her voice trembling. The man smiled faintly. Closure. For everyone involved. He took a step forward, his polished shoes crunching over wet gravel. Your brother interfered with a medical program that operates far above any one hospital. He believed he was saving lives, but he was costing billions. Claire shook her head. You're lying. Am I? His voice dropped. He saw the reports. The equipment failures. Do you know how many people were cured because of the algorithms he tried to expose? Every system needs sacrifice. Daniel understood that in the end. Harris finally spoke, his voice tired and low. They told me you wouldn't stop. They said to reason with you first. Claire looked between them, disbelief and betrayal crashing through her. He sold him out. Harris stared at the ground. They were going to erase him anyway. At least this way, I can make sure they didn't come after you. The man in gray extended a gloved hand. Give me the drive, Miss Carter. Walk away, and this ends tonight. The wind howled through the empty hilltop. Claire felt the weight of the USB in her coat pocket. Her brother's voice. His final truth. She took a slow step backward. If I give it to you, what happens to his name? History forgets faster than you think, the man replied. Something inside Claire hardened. Then let's make it remember. She turned and ran. A gunshot echoed through the fog. The bullet grazed the metal railing beside her, sparks flying. Harris shouted, Don't shoot. But the man in gray ignored him, striding forward. Claire darted into the observatory's broken doorway, the echo of her footsteps blending with thunder. She climbed the narrow spiral stairs to the control deck, lungs burning. At the top, she found the old telescope's console still intact, and beside it, a terminal connected to a satellite uplink. She fumbled the USB into the slot. The ancient screen flickered to life, humming with static. The files began uploading. One by one, each titled Patient Record. Systemic failure, financial fraud. Down below, Footsteps approached fast. Claire's breath came in ragged bursts. Come on, come on, she muttered. The progress bar crawled forward -42%. Then, gunfire. The glass dome above her shattered, a bullet whizzing past her ear. Greater than. You can't stop what's already built. The man in gray shouted from below. Claire pressed her hand to the terminal, whispering, "Watch me." The final file uploaded. A single line of text appeared on the screen. Broadcast complete. Distributed mirror active. Every local news server, every public data node, all of it had received the truth. By dawn, the video had already gone viral. Major networks were replaying fragments of Daniel Carter's recordings, the whispers about controlled experiments, the falsified death certificates, the hidden ledger of bribes connecting hospital administrators to Lunaris systems. The story spread like wildfire. Medical titan under investigation. Whistleblower surgeon predicted deadly failures. Claire sat in her car outside a 24-hour diner, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly at the glowing screen of her phone. Reporters spoke her brother's name as though they had always defended him. It didn't feel like victory. Her inbox overflowed, messages from journalists, legal teams, even old classmates offering support. But among them was one short, chilling email with no sender listed. You shouldn't have uploaded it. You don't understand what you've done. She looked around the parking lot. No one. Just fog and silence. The next moment her car radio came alive with a burst of static. A man's voice cut through, calm, almost kind. You think corruption dies in daylight, Miss Carter? You've only changed its shape. It was him. The man in the gray coat. Claire's pulse spiked. How are you? Greater than. There were 7 hospitals in that network. You exposed one. The others are already shifting protocols. You revealed the symptom, not the disease. The radio crackled, then silence. She slammed her hands against the steering wheel in frustration. What do you want from me? Perspective, the voice replied faintly. You've made yourself useful. Then, nothing. The radio cut out completely. That evening, the FBI announced a formal inquiry into Lunaris systems. A dozen executives were detained, including David Thorne, the man Daniel had mentioned in his files. Claire watched the news as agents led him away in handcuffs, cameras flashing. For a brief moment, she felt Daniel's presence beside her, as if he were watching too. But peace didn't come. At midnight, she returned home and found her apartment door slightly open. Inside, everything was untouched except for one thing, the photo of her and Daniel from childhood, lying face down on the table. On the back, someone had written in neat block letters, "Balance must be restored." Her heart raced. She rushed to check her laptop. Gone. The USB too. The air felt colder than before, heavy with silence. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Greater than. Miss Carter, said a new voice, younger, softer. We need to talk. I'm not with them. But you've started something you can't stop. Who are you? She asked. Someone inside. I can help you finish what your brother began. A pause. Meet me where he recorded his last tape. The line went dead. Claire stood in the middle of her living room, surrounded by the ghosts of her brother's work, realizing that the story wasn't over, not even close. The night was sharp and endless as Claire drove toward the old Holloway Research Wing, the abandoned annex where Daniel had once recorded his final tape. The building stood like a monument to forgotten experiments. Windows shattered, corridors sealed by rusted locks. Her flashlight trembled in her hand as she crossed the threshold. Every step echoed through the hollow structure. Somewhere deep inside, a generator hummed, a faint reminder that something was still alive here. She descended a flight of stairs marked restricted access. The sign below it read, Authorized personnel only, property of Lunaris systems. The air smelled of ozone and disinfectant. Then, from the darkness ahead, a voice spoke. You came. A man stepped out, the one who had called her. Young, mid-30s, wearing a hospital ID badge half torn off. His eyes were sunken, haunted. Who are you? Claire demanded. My name doesn't matter, he replied softly. I worked under your brother. Maintenance division. I saw what he saw. He held up a small black drive. This is what he died for. Claire's breath caught. What's on it? The core protocol's internal testing data showing how Lunaris designed deliberate failure points in their surgical AI systems. The machines weren't malfunctioning. They were programmed to fail after a set number of operations. It was built into the code. She stared at him, horrified. Why would anyone? Insurance payouts, he said flatly. Each patient death generated claim revenue that funneled back into shell accounts. Thorne didn't just cover it up. He engineered it. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The man looked over his shoulder. There's more. Your brother found an earlier version of the protocol codenamed Oath. He believed it was a military project, repurposed for civilian hospitals. That's why he started acting erratic. He realized the only way to expose it was to become part of the pattern. Claire's eyes filled with tears. He let them destroy him to save others. The man nodded. He uploaded fragments of the data scattered across private servers. The rest is on this drive, but there's one problem. It's encrypted with a biometric lock. His. She froze. You mean? Yes, he whispered. We need his remains, his fingerprint. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then the sound of tires outside. Headlights swept across the broken windows. The man turned pale. They found us. Who? Before she could finish, gunfire shattered the front door. Claire dove behind a steel table as the man shouted, Run! Take the drive! He tossed it to her. Then a shot rang out. He fell. No! She screamed, grabbing the drive and sprinting toward the back exit. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she tore through the maze of hallways. Bullets pinged off pipes. She burst into the cold night, stumbling toward her car. As she sped away, the entire building behind her exploded in flames, a controlled detonation. Claire didn't stop driving until the city lights faded behind her. The black USB drive burned in her coat pocket, the culmination of everything. Daniel had worked for the files, the recordings, the protocols, all evidence of Lunar Systems crimes. She parked at a small, secluded cafe, its neon sign flickering. Inside, she set up a laptop and connected the drive. Her hand shook as she opened the first folder. Financial ledgers, internal emails, video footage from operating rooms. Every piece told the same story: manipulation, greed, death, and cover-ups spanning decades. She uploaded the data to multiple secure journalism networks simultaneously. The files were mirrored across independent media outlets, legal repositories, and anonymous whistleblower portals. Minutes later, the world reacted. Breaking news banners streamed across screens worldwide. Whistleblower exposes $500 million hospital corruption. Lunaris executives arrested. Government investigation launched. Mystery surgeon predicted failures, exposed crime network. Claire watched in stunned silence. This was bigger than she imagined. People started calling, emailing, journalists, legal teams, even former patients who survived mysterious complications. The flood of evidence sparked protests, lawsuits, and demands for accountability. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Greater than Claire Evans, a calm voice said. You did what your brother couldn't finish. Now the system knows its day of reckoning has come. It was the man who had helped her escape, the insider greater than. What happens now? She asked. Now, he replied, you let the truth breathe. People will decide, but no one can erase what has been seen. Claire closed her eyes, letting the weight of years of secrecy and danger sink in. She thought of Daniel, his quiet courage, the sacrifices he made. The city outside buzzed with life, unaware that one woman's determination had shaken a multi-million-dollar empire. But Claire felt the world shift. Even if subtly, justice was beginning to take its place. She stood, stepping outside into the crisp morning air. The first sunbeams pierced the clouds, glinting off the puddles from the night rain. She knew her life would never be the same, but neither would the world around her. Somewhere, far above, Daniel's voice seemed to whisper, "You did it, Claire. You finished the story." And for the first time in months she smiled. The nightmare had ended, the truth unstoppable.